everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Manufacturing IT podcast. I'm joined today by Ryan Thompson. Ryan is the Industry 4.0 advisor at Skellig. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
So appreciate your time here, Ryan. So maybe you could start by giving us a bit of an overview into kind of a little bit about yourself and who Skellig are.
Sure, thanks so much. So obviously my name's Ryan. I like to describe myself as a recovering controls engineer. I've been in this space about 15 years, but in manufacturing for about 17 years. I had a brief stint in automotive upon graduating from university. But that was kind of too up and down for me. So I went into a more controls-oriented background with a company called Rantech that focused on food and beverage and pharmaceutical manufacturers. I started there as a controls engineer back in 2007, kind of progressive expansion of roles. So I would do things like PLC programming, HMI design, SCADA design. After about 5 years, I mean, Rantech was a pretty flat organization, like a lot of systems integrators. So you kind of got roles and responsibilities, not necessarily based on job title, but based on, hey, just, what fits, and you're kind of creating your own job as you go. So I kind of took on more project management activities, kind of transitioned gradually over 5 years from like a hybrid engineer project manager to more of a project manager. And then after about 5 years of that, I took more of a hybrid project manager slash sales role, which we call client success. And then in 2017, we had a client that was building a new facility in Florida. So I picked up my life from Toronto and moved to South Florida to support that operation and then kind of grow business outside of that. So I did that for just about 4 years. So we had an office in Florida and grew that to, up to 5 people. And, just in February of this year, I started a new role with a company called Skellig. Skellig is a life sciences focused manufacturer, specifically in biotech, but really all life sciences. I would say probably 80% of our business is in biotech though. Skellig was started around 12 years ago, primarily focused on DeltaV. That's probably 90% of our work right now is DeltaV work. But we recognize in the future, kind of open technologies are where we think the future is. That's where I personally think the future is. That's where Skellig thinks the future is. So around 2 years ago, Skellig started investing in an innovation group looking at newer technologies, Industry 4.0 focused, things like inductive automation, things like MQTT protocols, and how do we look at, how can we leverage what we know in life sciences and all we know about, procedures and regulations. Now, can we focus that to the, Industry 4.0 or Pharma 4.0, so that life sciences, which is kind of usually a laggard in technology adoption, can, take advantage of these new technologies without, understanding what their legacy systems are. Skellig is awesome with DeltaV. We're great with DeltaV. DeltaV is not going away, but we need to be able to leverage what you have with DeltaV with these newer technologies, leverage cloud platforms and advanced analytics and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and architectures that support all of that. So my role as an Industry 4.0 advisor is, I guess it's dual. It's both, Skellig or internal facing, looking at technologies that can help us and how we can market them, how we can set up training and make sure our engineers are prepared to deliver them. Picking best in breed technologies while remaining still technology agnostic. So that's, something that's really important to us, is that we're not, getting our customers into an ecosystem that they can't get out of. We want to be able to pick best in breed technologies of, whether that's an MES or an AI platform or a SCADA platform or even a PLC platform. We want to make sure everything is open and, we're giving our clients the best advice for that. And the other, so there's that Skellig side of it. And then there's also the external side of it, where I want to be, an advisor for our clients and helping them pick paths forward and being, honest and open with them about the pros and cons of choices that they're making. And, setting them up for success. Ultimately, with any integrator, your success is ultimately determined by, your customer success.
Yeah, no, definitely, Ryan. I think that's a really good overview, and thanks for sharing that. And I guess the beauty of your kind of career trajectory is it allows you to kind of really understand challenges on the shop floor, understand the OT side of the business, and really kind of be able to be that advisor to your clients. So makes a lot of sense. One of the things I'm always kind of keen to hear is what the different interpretations are of Industry 4.0. So, given your time before, maybe Industry 4.0 wasn't the buzzword it is now, but what's your interpretation of Industry 4.0 and what does the kind of terminology mean to you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's still sort of a buzzwordish to Industry 4.0. It's one of those things where, we'll just put it in the cloud and it will solve all of our
Up the
problems.
cloud.
Yeah, or you just will digitally transform, and that's that. To me, the most important thing about Industry 4.0 is that it's open. And there's certain architectures that are going to support that or not support it, but the fact that you have everything in an open ecosystem really is what I feel is going to drive a lot of value out of this. I think one of the things that has really kind of opened my eyes is when you start taking OT problems and using IT tools to tackle them, you're switching from like a really niche user base that has, I don't know how many system integrators there are on the world, tens of thousands maybe, something like that. But when you go into the IT space, now you're talking about tens of millions of people who have solved these types of problems before at scale, and have we all have, I think we all experience IT outages in our life because it's so built into how we go about our day to day. But IT infrastructure is just as reliable as controls and infrastructure, if not more often. Maybe not on the like that plant level where you have that IT OT cross, but like when you have like AWS uptime versus a generic facilities OT network uptime, it's not even close, right? And that's when you think about cloud solutions and things like that, it's like, oh, everybody is so concerned about their internet connection, but your internet connection is usually a lot more reliable than whatever you've got going on in the factory. But I think, because I kind of went on a tangent there, but that openness of Industry 4.0 is really what's going to leverage everything, and you can choose now that you've got data that's readily available anywhere. You want to use AWS or Azure or some sort of other, more niche offering that's been curated around what you're doing. Having everything open allows you to do that, versus you spend so much time in 3.0 factories extracting things out of black boxes, and it makes getting value out of that data a lot more difficult.
Yeah, that visibility really, I guess, makes a lot of sense. Ryan, one of the things I was also keen to hear is obviously, your background. You mentioned previously, food and beverage and pharma, and obviously now with Skellig, appreciate only 4 months into the role, but it's mainly a biotech customer base. What are the kind of common challenges that you're speaking about with clients, and is there like a common thread among the challenges that you're seeing?
So I guess biotech is very different than the rest, I'll say. Food, depending on the manufacturer, tends to be more commoditized, and they're very much focused on OEE and getting value out of that, and making sure uptime is 100%. Pharmaceuticals can go both ways, where it's like if you're making generic aspirin, your OEE matters, but if you're making a pill that's $100 a dose, your OEE doesn't matter as much as your batch. And biotech takes that one step further, where you're getting, especially now, into these like cell and gene therapies and personalized medicines, but even biologics, sometimes you're looking at $30,000 a dose or something like that. And so the value in OEE, you don't hear biotech companies talk about it too much, although it's there. They need to optimize things like their cells or their batch titers and their cell counts and things like that, where they're trying to optimize a lot more different things, and actually they lend itself to these AI models a little bit more, because these models tend to make sense of the data better than humans can.
That makes sense.
They also have sophisticated data science teams that can help them, and their goals are to optimize these processes, because if they can increase their cell counts, it makes their products a lot cheaper. But it's also more of a societal challenge too, where it's like, we have all these great therapies and remedies, but affordability is still an important thing. And if we can get these costs down for these medicines to be more palatable, it'll make a big difference for society in general.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And you raise a good point there. I didn't really think too much about, the maybe more commoditized production and focusing more on the OEE side. And then we talk about cell and gene personalized medicine where, as you say, the batch is really important. So yeah, I can understand both of those sides of the spectrum. So when you're talking to customers, who are you typically speaking to? Is it from the OT world, the IT world? Where are you kind of, picking to have the first conversation?
So I guess there's a mix. I would say most of our contacts are still on the OT side.
Okay.
The IT side often comes in when you start looking at, what kind of solutions you want to be offering. The OT side is what problems do we need to solve? How can we improve the business? And then the IT side is more, hey, tools and information and data security. And I think nowadays too, you still often hear about, IT and OT people fighting, and there's certainly some truth to that, but I think that's kind of gone away. I think most customers now are focused as a coherent business where IT is a problem solver and value add for their company, and that you don't get into these, oh, you can't put this device on my network. It's more of a, how can we put this device on my network in a secure way? But like we're still, those conversations we have are more first on the OT side, but the IT team is not far behind.
No, that's interesting. And I guess, there was always that IoT, OT and challenges and lack of maybe communication between that. So interesting to hear that you're seeing that maybe dissipate a little bit. So that's good to hear. Particularly when you are having those OT or conversations with people on the OT side of the business, is there a common challenge that people like that are having, and just seeing a particular IT solution that's solving that? Is there, something in particular that's having particular success at the moment?
I mean, every customer has their own problems they're trying to solve. I think people are still trying to really make sense of this industry 4.0 space and figure out where they are and where they want to be. I think a lot of times customers want to jump the gun and all of a sudden, oh, I want to have this, adaptive factory with, AI running everything. But it's a lot of work to get there, and really getting roadmaps in place is important. I think a lot of people really want fast time to value. Of course, everybody wants that.
Yeah.
So, proof of value types of projects are really attractive, where you can, hey, let's come in and do this project, and in a month we're going to get a return on our investment. I think those types of projects are great and exciting. I think it also is helping to change the mindset. Whereas, if you looked at some of these projects even 5 years ago, you might have said, oh, this is going to cost us $500,000 to do this, and it's all customized engineering work, and how do we validate this, which is obviously huge in life sciences, where you sell something you can't validate often. But I think now, part of that, part of my job and part of our job as an industry is to kind of educate manufacturers on, no, these things don't cost $500,000. You can do a lot with $50,000 and start building on that. So you have companies like that, and then you have other companies where it's they believe that just investing in technology is going to yield unexpected results, and that's on the side that I lean on, right? Is what's the value of putting infrastructures in place that allow you to put these types of projects up there quickly. I had a customer, this would have been 4 years ago or so, where we put in kind of an open source MES system for them, based on a kind of type of unified namespace type of architecture. Although we didn't call it that; it was more of a let's sneak it in type of thing. So we built this MES system. Everything was great there. They were part of our Operation Warp Speed, and I guess we put in the MES system prior to that. They were kind of a smaller company. Operation Warp Speed happened. It disrupted their business. They had to go from tens of thousands of units to millions, if not billions of units.
Wow.
But because we had the infrastructure in place already, it made that really easy. We had a couple of nice information or I guess analytics projects that we were able to just, hey, we've already got this data all contextualized because of the architecture we built. This is a bolt-on project, and it's going to take us 2 weeks, and now we're getting value, and we've got dashboards up, and people are making good decisions. So, could they have predicted that in 2018 that that's what they were going to get with the infrastructure they put in with their MES system? No, but they were a startup company that believed in, technology being an innovator and a driver, and just having that infrastructure in place was going to yield something unexpected. Similar to how, companies like, Google or Alphabet and Facebook or whatever, they just give their developers, time to just go explore things, and something good is going to happen from that. And when you have enough of it going on, you're going to get lucky, or not lucky, but something good is going to happen to you every once in a while. It's harder when you're super small, where it's like if you've got one guy that's just they're experimenting, he might make something great, or he might never do anything. But if you have 100, one of those people are going to have something that works.
Stumble on something.
And so I think that's, if you're able to make an infrastructure that supports all of this, you're going to find all sorts of use cases and value, and it's going to reduce, your total capital expenditure. But you don't know how yet. And it's harder, without the right project sponsors. Like, I can't go to you and say what my ROI is going to be, because I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know, how it's going to reduce our capital costs. You could pay me, $100,000 and I can do a study for you to figure, or you can invest $100,000 in the infrastructure and find out yourself. So there's people that do have that mentality, and just, hey, we believe in this infrastructure. We believe good things are going to happen. But there's also the other side that says, no, let's do POVs and build on that. And both can work, and both do work. But just is, a different mindset and culture at the company. I think it kind of, sorry, I'm going on here, fits into, where they are with their, the digital transformation in that, the digital maturity model. That's what I was looking for, is, are we, and not necessarily where they are, but a strong idea of where they want to go versus I have no idea. And both are okay.
No, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I guess that was kind of, it leads us on nicely, really, to kind of one of my next questions. And around it is that digital maturity kind of conversation. And I just want to kind of touch on something you mentioned about that kind of innovation and giving engineers a bit of time to create those use cases, create something maybe a little bit unexpected. And a lot of that's going to come from the culture of the business, right? That's going to come from a business that is digitally mature, digitally ready to bring these solutions into. But I guess, are you finding that it's a challenge to identify the businesses that are primed for a digital transformation, that are maybe more mature than others?
I don't know if it's difficult to identify them. I think there's always, there's people at every plant that want to do these types of things, but sometimes they're just not necessarily in the right position. And having that kind of sponsorship to just, go and, if you're going to fail fast. But I think that's, one of these things where it's, if you're having trouble getting a customer to buy into like a 2-week demo or 2-week proof of value that's going to cost $15,000, and maybe you're kind of knocking on the wrong door, and you might have somebody that believes in it, but you really need to get to, somebody who can be a suitable project sponsor. Because the other thing, I think it's getting to be a bit of a cliche now, but digital transformation is not a technology project, right? It's there's technology that's part of it, but it's probably 10% of the project is technology. All of these technologies work reasonably well if you have the right partner that can integrate the solutions for you. Like, you're not going to have a product that doesn't do what it says it's going to do. But you will have problems with, if you're not involving operators in your solutions and they don't want to use the system or this new model, they don't like the way it's doing, because if you're not building that culture of, and then you never get the return on investment, because you might have put in this awesome, paper replacement tool, but the operator hates it for whatever the reason is. Maybe they have to, and some of the reasons are, and people, at first pass might think they're silly. But if you have to do, you say you have to log into a system to enter a piece of information, you have to do that 50 times a day. Like, typing in your username and password is going to be a pet peeve, and you're not going to like. And you might think, as a designer or an engineer, it's like, well, they have to log in. That's just something they have to do, and it's going to take them time. But you have to do that multiple times. There's lots of things in your life that are small annoyances, but if you do them enough, they become like, oh, yeah. So I guess that's the other thing, is making sure that, whoever is using the solution is kind of involved from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it could be that the people that are using the systems are business level users that are working at dashboards, and then you're working with them. But if you're doing something where it's changing the way an operator works, you have to be working with them right from the beginning and building that culture of acceptance. But I think, going back to the original point, that's where making sure that you have a project sponsor that can make sure these things happen, because as an integrator or contractor, it's hard to go into a business to drive change. Who are you? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
If you don't have a sponsorship say, no, this is the way we're going to do it. And that's another problem with these Industry 4.0 projects is oftentimes they're kind of done as like an over the top. So we already have this existing system, but we're going to add like an analytics layer onto it.
Yeah, I've seen this.
You never have to use it, because the other system never goes away. And so it's harder to get buy-in there, because they still have the backup plan of using whatever they had before. So having a good project sponsors make sure that that doesn't happen.
That makes a lot of sense. And just the same you mentioned about digital transformation being maybe 10% around tech, and I think I've always prescribed to the thought that digital transformation is a mindset. It's a cultural shift within the business, and I think getting that buy-in and making sure everybody is looking for the same outcome is really pivotal. And you mentioned about companies. I guess let me rephrase, Ryan. So with so many companies offering digital solutions or integrating solutions, how can a manufacturer identify the right partner and kind of, what is it that you provide, or what is it that the company you represent provide to help customers know that they've got a trusted advisor, somebody who's got, the vision of a long-term relationship, not just kind of flip some licenses or some services and not care. How can companies identify the right partner?
So I guess cultural fit between business to business companies is critical. Skellig is very open, and we're going to be open and upfront with our customers. We're technology agnostic, so yes, we do partner with companies, but we're offering, and Skellig has spent an incredible amount of resources going through technologies and vetting them and making sure they do what they say they're going to do, making sure our engineers are trained on them. And that it's not just a credential that's kind of put on the wall and filed in a drawer and gone away. So I guess it's, if a company is lying to you and they're saying, hey, yeah, we're going to be all of these things, I don't know how you can suss out if someone is lying other than through references and that. But I think you get a good idea, a cultural fit, just kind of doing workshopping and even introductory meetings. You can get a good idea if you're on the same page. But for me, what you're looking for is someone, like, we want people to work with Skellig because they want to work with us, because it's a good experience for them, because they're getting value out of it, not because we've sold them something that only Skellig can maintain because it's all customized code. That's not us. That's something that I guess a good question would be, do we as a client own the outcome of the work? Like, do we have access to all of the source code? Do we have, is the design and that's another thing in life sciences, because it's so regulated, you're very rarely finding somebody that's not documented what they've done because they have to.
Yeah.
Whereas in, food and beverage, you see that a lot, where it's like, oh, we went to this integrator to get the solution and they put something in and nobody knows how it works and there's no electrical drawings and nothing.
Wow.
Whereas in life sciences, that's a lot more rare. But, do I own the source code? Do I own the IP? And sometimes too, it's in like the language of NDAs too. It's like, is it open and coming at, what's fair for both parties, or are they very much one-sided?
Yes, okay.
But it's kind of a subtle thing, and sometimes you don't figure it out until, the first time you work with someone and that goes both ways too. Like, you can have, as an integrator, you're going to have customers that this is just not the right fit for us. For whatever reason. It's not, integrators have to ask themselves that question too. You got to, pick your customers that work well with your culture, not just the other way around.
No, I think that's a fair point, and you raised some good questions. And I think, understanding those areas about who owns the source code and who owns the data and who owns the understanding of how things work, it makes a lot of sense. And I guess that kind of leads me on to one of my other questions, Ryan, is, over the last few years, I've seen a particular shift away. We talk about MES here, a shift away from, obviously huge systems, monolithic systems. Now there's a lot more modular based systems, seeing systems with kind of low code, no code, all of that good stuff. What are your thoughts on how these companies and these kind of open architecture MES platforms and modular platforms are making waves into the market?
I mean, there's a lot of excitement about them right now. I still think there's a gap. So I haven't seen too much of Apprentice. I think they're kind of keeping things a bit close to their chest right now. But platforms like Tulip, which are no code, low code, and very open, they have a lot of really great use cases and really quick time to values. But they're not set up, if you look at like a life sciences thing, like, we want to have an EBR type of system that's going to run all of our recipes corporately. They're not set up like a Werum or a Syncade or a PharmaSuite. And they're not meant to be. But I think it goes to what the use case for the client is. And I think one of the applications that you see these, cell and gene therapies where you're making 100 batches a year or something like that, but you try to put in one of these legacy, or not legacy, one of these MES systems, and it's like you said, it's overkill. It's going to cost you, $2 million and 2 years to get it done, and you're trying to make 100 batches. Now all of a sudden, my cost per batch is $200,000 or $20,000 in MES. So it doesn't fit there. At the same time, these things are so personalized, and you can't really rely on paperwork to do it either. So you need these kind of hybrid models where they're, information is still secure, batches are still managed properly, but you're not having the kind of overness, or I kind of think of like heavy and light is kind of an analog that kind of goes on in my mind. And heavy is great for, for some things and not for others. And I think the other thing that's going to be interesting in the market is how these, smaller companies or micro MES systems work, and in terms of like, are they going to be your only MES system, or are they going to augment what we have already? Let's use these new systems where they fit, and let's use our legacy systems where they fit. And I don't think it has to be either or. I think there's some fighting a bit on on the IT side. Well, now we have 2 service contracts to maintain, and you're going to have people trained on both systems, which would of course be an extra cost. But the systems are also low code, these newer ones, so training isn't a big issue. But it's something, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. I remember, when Ignition was, a new product, how much business Grantech got out of fixing bad ignition projects because the barrier to entry was so low. Literally anyone can go. I hate the word literally. Anyone can go to the internet, download Ignition and run it, right? And it costs you, a few $1,000s. So these new platforms, the barrier to entry is really low, and people are going to make mistakes. But I think we're also going to, that's part of learning is making mistakes. But I think we're also going to find, great use cases for them, especially like, every time I'm on a factory floor now and I see a piece of paper, it just drives me nuts, because I know the cost to digitize that is, a couple $1,000s. And you've got rid of paper there. Maybe there's some extra validation costs in it, but it's not like, this isn't an astronomical project. But if it's one of those things where if you have an infrastructure in place already, here's our digitized paper records, and all, we're not making this into an EBR. And if we have an EBR system, or even if we have a paper MBR, you might just be printing off a copy of that later and doing it. But at least the information is secure. You're guarding against things like entry errors, which can be like, there's no information on this, but I'm curious, like how often entry errors cause the holdup of the batch release, right? And now you've got an operator that missed a decimal place or something, and you're doing your batch release 2 months later, and it's great resignation, and they got a new job, and how do you go and correct that, and all sorts of things like that can be solved with just, hey, we're going to put some review by exception in a digitized paper thing, and we know that this value is out of bounds. And so those types of problems these smaller MES systems solve are, really, really quick time to value. I still have questions in my head on it. Are they going to replace the ecosystems? And certainly the players in this, like Werum that I mentioned, and these guys have spent billions of dollars on their MES platforms. They're not going away. There's still a huge market for their services, and they have the right use case. And I think they're going to, have other, as they're challenged by competitors, just like Tesla with electric cars, like these companies are going to have a more agile, lighter weight offering. But I love seeing them disrupted, and it's exciting. And it's just about finding the right use case. So you don't, even with these lighter systems, you don't want them to try to do something that's too heavy, because now your low code system becomes a really big configuration mess.
Yeah.
To try to get it to do something that, Syncade might do natively.
Yeah, no, I think you raised some really good points, right? And I really like the passion and enthusiasm you speak with. And I think that we're at the end of the episode. So I just want to say thanks so much for joining on the episode. I think the listenership is going to get a lot of value from what you said, and hopefully it can spark some conversations where people really question some of the decisions they've made or some of the decisions they've got in process. And thanks for joining me, Ryan.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. I really enjoyed it.
Good stuff. Thanks, Ryan. I thought that was a really good episode. You speak so well, and you got so much enthusiasm and passion in what you say. So I thought it was great.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.